Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thanks for staying entire day and joining me on this session. I hope you enjoy it and get some values from here. So, let's start. My name is Edina, and I have been working over 11 years with individuals, teams, leaders on unlocking their full potential. I have been guiding organizations through different types of transformation. I have been trying to help them adopt agile way of working and changing mindsets. And if any of you has been going through that kind of transformation or even led one, then you know which kind of challenges we face, right? And why is it so challenging? So, I'm sorry, I need to make a break. Is this working? Yep, okay. Sorry, going back to the presentation. So why is it so challenging to go through such transition? As a matter of fact, yesterday on my way here at the airport, I met one of the former colleagues of mine, and we chit-chatted about everything and, of course, about the work, and he shared he complained to me about a recent client he had. He said, we had an enormous client which wanted to go through the agile way of working transformation, and they had all of the means, if you know what I mean, to have one. They started they started with the theoretical part. They took all the courses. They got all these fancy certifications. They set up the process there, and then they also, he said, we even had several of Agile coaches there, and we failed. How is it possible? Why we failed? And he was even mockingly telling me, Agile supports failure, right? That's kind of environment we want to have, and what's wrong there? And he genuinely asked me a question. Tell me, in reality, are you able to practice in your own work environment what you preach on these workshops and talks that you give? And I really do not blame him for not believing in it. Because I have been there, I have been challenged myself several times, many times, but I always kept believing because I saw fractions of it. I saw it working. And it's not just about the agile, it's the mindset and the way of working. But there was always something missing. There was always that little bit part, because we make one step and then we fail again. There is something missing, and I always had so many questions that I tried to find answers for. So, as I was looking through these answers, and every year I tried to find a better way to implement, to help people to adapt to the change, to adapt to the process, and to shift their mindset through it. So, that's how I prepared this talk. And I came to amazing discovery that helps me do my work better. And I wanted to share this today with you. So, how can we shift our mindset to become more agile? Okay, I'm clicking, nothing is happening. Okay, thanks. So, I'm going to start with leadership because there is a lot of definitions about the leadership, and I want to use one here that I found interesting for today's talk, and it says, leaders nurture the strengths and talents of people and build teams committed to achieving common goals. And then on the other side, Agile, as we all know from the experience, increases people motivation, joy of work, and effectiveness. And I will use the opportunity to pinch in, this almost became a trademark of my workshops, but I always pinch in on the Agile values, and I like to use this one, my favorite, and it's valuing people over the process. And this is one of the common mistakes when we are trying to do the agile adoption, that we skip this part, that we don't understand it well. We need to value people more than the process, which means basically we still have the process, but we adapt the process to people, not the other way around. We don't push people into the process that we set up there. So, here I'm mentioning the talents, the people, motivation, joy of work, and what all of this has in common with the way we work, the way we are more effective at work, how we achieve our results. So why is it from brain perspective that these things are having such an impact on our results? And to be honest, this is not only in the work environment, this is also in our personal life. So there is a mix of science, a little bit of biology, psychology, and neuroscience that I choose today for you that can help us understand this problem better and therefore be better at what we do. So let's start. I'm going to quickly just give you some brief facts from this biological part, and I'm going to tell you about two critical regions of our brain that are impacting how we think and how we make our decision. One of them is prefrontal cortex, which is placed just behind our eyes, and this is the newest part of our brain, evolutionary speaking, and it is in charge of decision-making, high-level thought, goal-oriented behavior, mental flexibility, and emotion control. As I said, this is the newest part of our brain, which means that it only gets fully developed at the age of 20, which kind of, when you see the description here, gives us a really good explanation for all the bad decisions we made as teenagers. We were not there yet. We were not ready to be quite clear with our decisions. So also, scientists says that for prefrontal cortex, they called it the Goldilocks of the brain, which means everything has to be just right. Not too much, not too little, to be able to function properly, for us to be able to make a proper decision. So it's a super sensitive part of the brain. It's like the princess there. And to work at the optimal levels, we need to have enough of the glucose to fuel thinking in our brain, and also we have to be rested. So when we're feeling tired or hungry, we don't think clearly, right? And then, on the other side, the other part critical for thinking is limbic system, represented by the star here of the show, amygdala. Amygdala is this tiny piece of our brain, very tiny, in the shape of almond, which is placed deeper in our brain, and it only has one function: to minimize the danger and maximize the reward. Only that. And it works really hard to achieve that. And also, this is the place where our old habits are stored and our emotions. So when you look at this, these are the two parts of our brain that are doing the decisions for us. So, how many of you think of yourself that you are good with the intuition? Yeah, I always thought that I'm like some kind of a super powerful intuition person. You know that gut feeling that you have, that you say, I have a really good feeling about this, let's buy this, or let's take this road because I'm not feeling quite comfortable with that one, I have a bad feeling. Well, I'm sorry to break it down to you, it was a shock for me as well, but that is not a gut feeling, we are not superstitious or intuitious, but it's amygdala talking to you. Why? Because it's basically recognizing the patterns. Sometimes in our life before, something happened that our brain recognized it as a pattern. And it stored it. It could be an emotion, a sensory thing, it could be something that we saw, heard. It didn't have to happen to us. But our brain stored it as a pattern and used it later for us. So we had this intuition or a gut feeling. So, prefrontal cortex, limbic system. what happens, that is part of our nervous system, and what happens when we start introducing stress. So this is where all the complications happen and all the fun happens. So under stress, so you know that we have little neurons communicating between themselves, and that's how limbic system fires up the message towards the prefrontal cortex to make a decision. So under induction of a little bit of a stress, or a lot, or feeling anxious, our neurons start to shut down. They become completely dysfunctional. So basically what happens is that, I cannot move here, but I had the movement like, amygdala is telling to the prefrontal cortex, like, step back, I'm here to take the control. So basically prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for decision making, to be rational, to be smart, is shut down. So amygdala takes over, takes control, and makes decision for us. Why is this a bit alarming? It's because it's based on the old habits that we have, on the patterns. I'm going to go deeper into that. So, this is just our basic survival system that has been developed throughout thousands of years, because if we go all the way back to the cave period of time, caveman survived only because of his friend amygdala, because it was telling him, okay, this is dangerous for you, run. Now amygdala helps us cross the street or do something more simple. So our brains perceive stress as danger. And in that case, our brain can only decide, are we gonna freeze, fight, or run away from the situation that we are finding ourselves in. Another interesting thing that I found that neuroscientists discovered through the research, that in our brains, so when you say to someone, can I share feedback with you? That simple sentence fires up the same sensors in our brain as we have seen a dangerous animal in the forest. Imagine, why is it like that? It's, can I share a feedback with you? So if your manager approaches and tells you, can I share a feedback with you, why nobody of us is thinking, maybe he recognized all the effort I did. Maybe he's going to praise me for something. But all of us instantly think, oh my God, what did I do wrong? Am I getting fired? Again, amygdala, trying to sense the danger and warn us. So, but there is a salvage for that. For example, prefrontal cortex, even though super sensitive, can work properly, can respond properly to stress in case if we feel in control. If we have any sense of influence or autonomy, we can overcome this stress and use our prefrontal cortex to actually make a proper decision, to be more motivated. And how do we will think more rationally and make smarter decisions. And how can we help others to do that as leaders? Is making sure that people feel motivated, is making sure that people are trusted and empowered. So if you feel stressed and out of control, you're not going to make a right decision. In this over-arousal state, your brain processes things differently. Your brain takes the path, the shortest path of the least resistance, and it will work to make these negative connections even stronger. So, basically what I'm saying here is whenever we are making decisions, if we are feeling under stress, we are going to use certain neurons in our brain to create a connection towards the prefrontal cortex. And in case we are under stress, we don't know how to handle it, we're going to make a bad decision, not the rational one. And we will make a connection there. Next time our brain sees the similar pattern, it's going to respond the same if we don't stop it. And again and again. over years, over some longer period of time, guess what? We change physically the brain, how it operates. It's literally the physical change on our brain. And it's devastating a bit. At least I got scared. So when you have that behavior that is driven by threat, and you repeat it, you get into a vicious cycle, and you start seeing danger where there is no danger. I'm going to share my personal story about this to give you some sense a bit more here. So a few years ago, I moved to a paradise island in Canarias, and it is all beaches and all sun entire year. But one thing I didn't know is that Canarias are flooded with cockroaches. Another thing that I didn't know is that I have a phobia of cockroaches. I never saw one when I lived here or anywhere else, and I heard about them. I knew that they are disgusting, but I never encountered one. So when I found one in Canarias, I freaked out. I froze. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. I had real physical problems. I stopped going out at night. I stopped using certain streets. I blocked myself from social life just because I felt this phobia, not just a fear, it was a phobia from the cockroaches. And every time I would see them, I would start reacting even worse and worse. And I start imagining them where they were not there. That was my brain, and I was doing that to myself. I was making these negative connections in my brain, encouraging this pattern. So I would start jumping even if I see a cigarette butt. So that's a bad example, but I'm going to later tell you how I solved it. So in this state, when this was maybe a little bit extreme, but if we go back to the work environment, you have a new colleague who just joined your team. They will be terrified because it's a completely new environment, or you have a new project, or they don't know the technology. They will feel certain amount of fear, of stress. And how you can help them as a leader is that offer them encourage and support so you can make the optimal level of dopamine in their brain so they can function properly, they can feel comfortable, you create a safe environment for them. And believe it or not, from this chemical point of view, even asking a simple question as, what can I do for you to reach your goal? Or, team, I see you're in trouble to catch up with the release date. Is there something I can do to support you? Just that simple question fires up the dopamine in our system, and you will do much more for them than actual physically if you're doing something. So this is one of the things that you could do. And our brains, so just a little bit of the positive motivation there. And our brains are always working as prediction machines. They're trying, especially amygdala, just observing and trying to figure out everything that is around us happening. Is it threat, danger, or reward? Only two options. So it is on us to help balance that. This means that people, when they don't know what's coming up, what's coming next, they tend to imagine the worst. And I'm sure that happened to you. When you don't know, you're waiting for some results, you will go into the darkest parts of your brain thinking the worst possible thing is going to happen. So for example, again, in the work environment, if you think, if people have no idea what's going to happen, they don't know who's the new Scrum Master, what's on the roadmap, they start freaking out. Where are our tickets? If I go very technical into details. So they waste a lot of time imagining the bad scenarios, and one of the things that is very helpful there is the clarity. I heard my colleagues mentioning that in other sessions as well, and clarity is really crucial here, keeping them in the loop, transparency. Because this is something behavioral. It comes when we were kids, when you travel with your parents or somewhere and asking, are we there yet? It's just our brain trying to figure out where are we, what's going to happen next? Am I in threat? Am I in danger? And why does this matter? So for the leaders out there, be aware of your people, where your people lies in this continuum. This balanced on the rock part represents the prefrontal cortex, which always needs to be super balanced to work properly. So figure out where your people lays down in that continuum and start from there. Use that as your starting point to design the interaction you're going to have with the people. So it is on you, it is on us to design that interaction to maximize the reward and minimize the danger. So they don't feel endangered, they feel rewarded. Okay, so as my main topic here is neuroscience, very interesting to me. I am no scientist, so I know there are a couple of, there is a psychologist here and maybe some other scientists, so I'm really sorry if I mispronounce something, but whatever I found here, I found it very interesting for people to know and understand it better. So neuroscience focuses on the brain and its impact on behavior and cognitive functions. And then what neuroscience can do for us in agile world, in work environment, it shows that knowing where we are going and where we are and where we are going helps our brain to calm down and to be able to focus, because our nervous system is under stress. If we manage to calm it down, we will see the picture clearly. So giving people overview, understanding together, and building the clarity together acts as a reward in our brains. So that's the ultimate goal we want to achieve here, and how to get there. So I'm going to pinch in a little bit on psychology part as well here, because I've spoken with some of the psychologists, and one of them helped me a lot to understand this part of our system as well, and I found it amazing. So maybe it helps to you too. So there are a couple of the theories I'm going to share today with you that I think are very helpful. One of them is 3 circles of emotional regulation that you can see here. There is a drive system, soothing system, and threat system. Drive system, the blue one, yeah, you can see it. Drive system is responsible for achieving goals, consuming things, accomplishing the tasks, so it's very active. Then we have soothing system, which is responsible, it has function to relax, to soothe ourselves, to be kind, to be to feel the care, and to rest and digest. And the third one, the threat system, has function to manage threats, to protect us, to survive, and to seek safety. Rings a bell? It kind of sounds like amygdala before and prefrontal cortex. I'm not saying it's exactly that, but for me it was kind of similar. And although we might think that, because according to this theory, psychologist says that all of us go through these 3 circles throughout our life, trying to train them and balance them. But surprisingly, the research says that we mostly use drive system, the blue one and the red one, threat system. Somehow, we forget about the soothing system. If you try to replicate it on your life, for example, at work, you try to meet the expectations that are set up at your work by your manager, and then you feel you go into this threat system. Am I going to achieve it? Am I going to do it right? Then you go and set up new expectations. Am I doing it? You're achieving goals. I need to work harder. And you go bounce back between these two, and you burn out. Because you forgot to relax. You forgot to soothe yourself, your system, because this is nervous system, and we need to protect it. But we don't have time for that, especially in these days, right? So, message of this theory, find time, practice, because all these 3 areas can be trained. and we are in charge. Don't forget to work on your soothing system. And interesting fact, monks, they are doing meditation most of their time. They are relaxing. And the researchers have done MRI scans of monk brain, and what they notice is quite surprising. Their amygdala, do you remember that small part of our brain, which is a bit bigger than almond? It's shaped like almond, and it's a little bit bigger. Researchers showed that amygdala in monk brain is the size of a raisin. Imagine that it's possible to physically shrink amygdala because they stopped this stress system. They were relaxing, they were being mindful, taking care of their nervous system. So amygdala was super small. It's kind of shocking. So yeah, next theory I want to introduce you to is polyvalent theory, which is represented by this ladder. And actually, this is the theory that I use to overcome my phobia with cockroaches. It has 3 levels here, and basically what scientists are saying is that at the bottom level, when you are under attack, your nervous system is under attack, under large amount of stress or anxiousness, you freeze. You completely get numb. Like myself, I couldn't move physically. It's a complete shock for your nervous system. You cannot move, you cannot make a decision, you cannot do anything. So it's represented here, and your nervous system completely shuts down. With certain help, you can go to the next level, I would say, which is actually this fight or run away part that I mentioned before, where you actually can move and you can decide, but that decision is not going to be quite clear. And the ideal position on this ladder is the top one, where you feel safe, you can get social, you can get engaged. In my case, when I started going out again, I didn't care for these stupid bugs around me because I didn't see, my nervous system didn't see them as threat anymore. I felt in control. So what is interesting about this theory is that key part of it is co-regulation, which means that having another human next to us, we can heal, we can get help. Basic representation of that, example of that, is when baby cries and mother gets it in its proximity, it stops crying because it feels soothed. So that's the most basic example of this co-regulation. So you find your partner in crime and they can help you out-soothe this. And another thing interesting here that I found, I put it on the paper here. So it's just one of the psychologists said, trauma compromises our ability to engage with others by replacing patterns of connection with the patterns of protection. So instead of engaging with others, we are disengaging, we are siloing ourselves. Why I wanted to share this one with you is, if you're able to address where your people are on this ladder, you know how to approach them. You know what they need. And one more theory I want to share with you, and it was kind of my favorite. It was blow minding for me, is the attachment theory. Attachment theory basically says there are these 4 quadrants that each and every one of us belongs to one of these. And do you know what else it says? It says, basically, the way we have been raised as kids by our parents or caregiver is determining how are we going to be when we grow up. The way we are going to make connections, the way we will have relationship with our partners, with our family, with our colleagues. And for me, it was stunning that for example, secure part here, secure quadrant here says, if your caregiver or parent raised you in a safe environment with a lot of motivation and support, you will grow up in a very secured, self-esteemed person. You will not have separation problems or problems to communicate. You will be very direct and you will be very responsive, secure in yourself. But what happens if you have been raised in an environment where lack of motivation happens, or you have been punished for something, or if you felt missing one of the parents or caregivers? It messes up you completely, the more that you can even know. You raise into a human being, in a grown-up, who is not able to make quality connections with others. You develop an anxiety. You have separation issues. You self-doubt yourself. It doesn't have to go into extremes, but you can feel that presence in yourself. You will have problems at work trusting people. Reason I share this, really, for me, this was very helpful. So I'm not going to deep dive into this, but you can find a lot of interesting material on internet and in the books about the attachment theory. But imagine if you are able to recognize where your team individual fits into these four quadrants. It will mean that if you have a person who is preoccupied, anxious, that from time to time you need to go and reassure them that they are doing good work. You don't have to do that with a secure person. And then, the good part of all of this that I'm talking and these physical changes in the brain that happen, that we make bad connections, is that we have neuroplasticity. That's the best, biggest news for today. That is our brain's ability to modify, to change and adapt both structure and function throughout life and in response to experience. What am I saying here? It's possible to rewire your brain, to reprogram it. The same way I created these negative connections to have this phobia of cockroaches, I was able to rewire it, and now I don't have that problem anymore. So you can try this with some other things. It can be less stressful, but it could work out. So even though we were raised wrongly or in hard environment, it is possible to change that. It's not easy though. So coming to the conclusion part, through all of these sciences and everything, I want to go back to certainty, something I mentioned at the beginning, and I heard the other speakers mentioning it as well. As I said, just a little bit of uncertainty when we don't know where we are going. Our amygdala is going to fire up like Las Vegas at night. It's going to scream, danger, danger, go away from this. So give your people certainty, give yourself certainty. For example, how do we do it in Agile? If I need to go again, because I like to speak about Agile in more broad term, not as a methodology, but something that we do with our lives as well. We adapt to different changes. But if we go to the methodology part, how we have this certainty, because Agile is about uncertainty, right? It's about you have no idea what's coming. You're not planning that. But you have to give a little bit of the security to your teams, and you do it with these little plannings for the next 2 weeks, for a next week or something. So you give them a little bit of something. That's how you create certainty, and that equals reward. People feel much more secure, because I have had teams that were shouting, I have no idea what's coming on our roadmap. This is disaster. So give them something to work on. And yeah, maybe this is the part where I should mention. In the opening speech, Valerio was talking about outcome-based roadmaps. I had situation with my teams as well, where one of the product teams decided to go down that road, and they decided to go with the outcome-based roadmaps. And it was amazing. They did a pitch for the stakeholders, for the business layer of the company, and they didn't involve engineers. And what happened? Everything exploded, because they had no idea what's going on. They were like, how are we going to work without roadmap? I want to see something. Where are my tickets? But what they should have done is actually go and sit with the engineers themselves and say, listen, these are the problems, these are the challenges we want to solve, how you could do it. And then they start doing the experiments. They would feel involved and engaged. And this is the part that gives them influence and autonomy. As leaders, we have to trust our people in order for them to really be effective. Just before this presentation, I spoke with the colleagues here about the trust and this after COVID part, where during COVID, everybody was working remotely, and after COVID, boom, let's go to the offices. A lot of companies have demanded their people to come back to offices. And they were not even hiding the reason for that. They were saying, they will not do their work at home. We want to see what they're doing. They will not be as effective. And who are we kidding here? If you're going to fake it at home, you can fake it in the office as well. We all know that. So that is a lack of trust. And how can you go back? I'm really sorry if you are part of that environment, but how can you go back to that office, into that environment where people do not trust you? You don't feel safe. You don't give your 100%. As leaders, as colleagues, we need to trust our team so they feel safe and we bring the transparency there. And then, I'm going to go back to my first question. Why is making this shift in agile mindset, in agile ways of working, sometimes difficult, especially in the gate-based environment? It is because, like in any other behavioral change, we need to break out the old habits and rewire our brain. We have to start thinking with our prefrontal cortex to learn the new ways of working, doing things that we have done before. And we all know that's very hard. Old habits are hard to break. It takes a lot of energy, and we said prefrontal cortex is very sensitive. You need to have a lot of energy and rest. So it takes a lot of energy. That's why it goes so slowly and it's hard. And every change requires modifying the old habits, where amygdala literally screams, I don't want to do it. I want to do things the way I learned it. I have stored patterns here, let's use them. Why are we going to change things? So change of any kind, including a change of working in Agile, is perceived to our brains as extreme novelty. And we as human beings are hardwired to resist any kind of change. So how we can overcome this, what we can do as leaders? Break those changes in small parts. I always say to everything that my people are doing, do the baby steps. Whichever change you want to do, take the baby steps. Try it, get the feedback, and do it again. Because it's going to be much easier if you fail in that. When it comes to broader organizational changes, telling others what works, what they need to do, it doesn't work. So if you remember my former colleague from the beginning of my speech, he was super mad with the client because they put everything into place and they told people how to do things, and it didn't work. What they got? A back off. I don't want to do this. If you push people, they will resist even more. Amygdala of theirs is going to resist even more. So involving people into the change will get them on board. Even though if they are not 100% sure of that, they will help you if they are involved. get their hands dirty. And it's very helpful to figure out what, in their environment, what is perceived as danger and what's perceived as reward. For anything, when you see your team insecure or individual, what makes them feel secure and what makes them feel bad? And then mindset, I have talked a lot about the human nature from brain perspective and why Agile works with the change, the way it works. But mindset is even a step further, even harder, because it's not just a change, it's behavioral change, it's mindset change. So as leaders, we need to be patient because it takes even more time for this. But what we need to provide here for the people is the clear path, security, and providing much of the support and encouragement. We need to give people the clarity. They need to feel safe in the way they're working. And once we get there, these positive behaviors are going to rewire our brain, and it's going to feel natural for us to receive a feedback and to give a feedback. And this is all what Agile is about. I know it's tacky, but I wanted to share this here because I love what Teddy Roosevelt said. Human nature is the most important subject to understand if you want to be a leader. Being a leader at your home, in your community, with your friends, at your work, is not just about the effectiveness. I found my answers in human behavior. If you are able to understand this, you will be able to help your teams and yourself to develop into better. So, I really hope I managed to intrigue you into this area and to see how science can help us understand. It's a bit deep topic, but if you're able to understand how our brain works, you will be able to help your teams and yourself to grow faster and better. I got my answers here. So, I'm inviting you to rewire our brains and to lead with our hearts and to help others to do the same. Before I say thank you, I'm going to invite you to, because this was the first time I'm presenting this, it's a new topic for me. I would really appreciate any kind of feedback that you can send me on LinkedIn or any other social network, because I want to improve it. So, thank you.